Thank you.
Ja, genau. Hier steckt. Haben wir hier Strom jetzt? Ich will das sein. It was the very first bunch. It was the very first with Chris. He did a copy with Chris.
Okay, then let's start. Is everybody ready? Can you hear me well? Am I screaming? Very good. Okay, so thank you everybody for being here today, and thank you for your time. And it's an honor for us that you're sharing this important moment to our NGO, because this is our first public event. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a cool event. We're going to have a very nice discussions, and we're also going to learn about the TUM strategy in Africa. So please give yourself a round of applause for being here. So to the event flow, as probably most of you know, we will first have a welcoming word by our partner Unternehmertum. And then we're going to have a keynote lecture from Professor De Vries, and then we're going to have a panel discussion. And after that, very important, we're going to have the international food, made with love by us. It's going to take place over there. Here you can see posters of the research of many TUM students, which is related to our work in Africa. And let's geo-reference some important things. So the toilets are over there. And we have here a registration list. So for those of you who didn't fill it yet, please search your name in here. It's basically for the people who registered on Eventbrite, okay? And if you don't find your name, add your name in the list, okay? And then we will know how many people have attended. Thank you very much. I will pass it around. Okay, so by this, I will give the word to Anastasia. So give her please a round of applause. Anastasia is from Entrepreneurship, and it's without Entrepreneurship we wouldn't have had this nice event here. So basically, it was a suggested idea, and then we said we're gonna do it. And so thank you very much for hosting us in this nice place today. And yeah, here you go.
Thank you so much, Rim. So basically, for me, first of all, thank you for applause even before I started to talk. It's very, very peaceful to get. And thank you, for me it's really an honor to host this event, to present Unternehmertum, and especially my team, Tech Talent. So basically you can see the roll-up, it's the colors of my clothes, so you won't forget it. And I saw a few familiar faces. Hi guys, thank you for coming. Hi. And yeah, most of the faces are new, and first question is, I just wanted to tell you something about this building, about this place, and have you been to there before? Could you please raise your hands if you have been here? Yay, quite a few. And who is for the first time here? Wow, that's great. So I think my short speech will be interesting for you. So basically, here is the TUM's part of the entrepreneurship heart of Garching, and I think of Munich, probably of Germany, I hope so. And here magic happens and crazy things, and everything. The other part of the building is basically Unternehmertum, and here we have a lot of offices for our internal staff. We also have venture capital partners, we have tech talents team, we have X incubator for the startups, a lot of things, crazy things. And one of the enter points how you can approach us, Unternehmertum, if you're a student, I see a lot of students here, is to go to Makerspace and build something really cool, for example, with the help of 3D printing, laser cutting, or everything you want. Just go to the front desk and ask how you can do it. Or if you want to go into ecosystem and get the contacts, and also if you want to see how your startup could start, then you can go to Tech Talents or X Community and start to Think Make Start and do really interesting stuff like self-moving boards, yeah, or any robots or anything, vending machine, right? I mean, it's really interesting to start and just to have the opportunity to put your skills to the test. That is what we do here, and we're really passionate about this. Of course, we say yes to every event that seems interesting and inspiring for people. Thank you, and have fun today.
Thank you, Anastasia. Perfect. Okay, so now we'll move to our next plan today, which is the keynote lecture by Professor De Vries. Professor De Vries is holding the chair of civil, faculty of civil geoengineering. His research is mainly about rural and land development, also capacity building for land development. Thank you, Professor De Vries, that you're here today. The reason that Professor De Vries is with us today is because he's also part of the TUM Africa initiative, and he's here today to talk about the TUM projects in Africa. Thank you again.
I had some slides. I'm not sure if I can use them or if I can just... We will go automatically. Good. I'll try to be brief because this is maybe the most boring part or the most sort of organizational part of this whole entire evening. I guess the TUM Africa has been known since or has been going around for maybe 2 or 3 years. And that's the idea that within TUM we can, first of all, we can work with African partners and also be beneficial to African projects. But until now, many of those projects and ideas have been quite scattered throughout the university. And if we combine efforts, then maybe we could really make a difference. That's the general idea of TUM Africa. So the idea came up to consolidate all those efforts and work. Of course, we can work with all the partners and with all the projects and ideas that we have, and there are many of those, but maybe consolidate those efforts in a collaboration with a single university first, and then scale up from there. And the idea was taken, or the decision was taken last year to work with a university in Africa that is more or less the same size like TUM, and also has more or less the same faculties. And that turns out to be KNUST in Kumasi, Ghana. They are also of roughly about 40,000 students, similar faculties like we have here. So it seems like a good partner with whom we could actually create a win-win situation. And it should not be such that, and that's the old sort of development paradigm that Western countries or Germany in particular tells Africa what to do. It should be an equal partnership, something that is beneficial both from the German side and from the African side. So in order to make that effort a little bit more concrete, we've signed an agreement with KNUST last year in November. with the director or with the vice rector of international affairs, and we want to build on that agreement with concrete projects. So the idea, or actually what was done, was to include the TUM Africa idea in the TUM Excellence Initiative, and if TUM is successful in obtaining that, then TUM Africa would also get a small portion out of that. Now, what is the idea? It is to make a joint partnership that is beneficial to both on issues and on science and technology that is also of interest to both universities. There is a number of collaborations already. I've seen initiatives in energy, in land, in my own field, in water. Not so long ago there was also a water initiative, the Great Green Wall of Africa. But all these initiatives are insufficiently connected, you could say. So, for example, if we talk about energy, we could also talk in relation to that to land matters, because energy is needed where the people live and where the people work at the end of the day. You have to plan for that. So I see, from my own perspective already, lots of beneficial connections. So, in general, maybe that's the most boring part of this evening, there is a structure. How can we collaborate together? We've identified three main nexus, we could say. One is the nexus water, food, energy. The second one is land, construction, mobility, environment, where you construct and build something. And the third one is global health and governance. And you can see the various projects that are already undertaken, but within those three nexus, we could actually build more projects and create cohesion into that. How can we do that? Very often projects start rather small with some initial idea, maybe with an exchange with some personal contacts, but you could actually build on all types of activities and therefore also apply for all sorts of research funds, capacity building funds. And this is an overview of how you could do that. The idea is that the collaboration is not just technology transfer or knowledge transfer, but also to create research that has a certain impact and research that also generates entrepreneurs. Like the initiatives that are ongoing and also the initiatives that I see in the posters here. I think that's the kind of research we would like to do. Interesting for us and also interesting for the African partners, both in Germany and in various African countries. So here you see a kind of overview of the activities that you could do. Now, some initiatives have started already. Here are just three examples which I mentioned here. Sustainable transport, the colleagues from Sustainable, these are the ones that I know best because of my own faculty. Sustainable transport is working on mobility issues, in particular road infrastructure in Kumasi and Accra in Ghana, for example. How can you improve that? How can you deal better with the public transport, for example? There has been a workshop on design thinking, for example, and there have been various initiatives in the field of land management as well. And besides that, there's also the e-car, of course, and some energy initiatives. So the idea is, with this TUM Africa initiative, that we are going to provide for seed money for further initiatives, so to build or to extend certain initiatives. We hope to get some of the excellence money that should be available. I hope to know a little bit more about that in May. Well, May is already today, yes, May, June. So pretty soon, you could say. And in addition, it would be good to extend. We maintain a catalog of all sorts of funding resources, but also entrepreneurial skills and ideas are also very welcome. Then there will be a bi-yearly call. That's sort of the idea, in which we, together with KNUST, of course, decide now this is a good initiative, this deserves some more attention, or maybe some startup. funds. So the idea is to have a true North-South collaboration which is prototypical, not just one-sided, unilateral, but truly joint management, joint forces, and joint benefits. It should really lead to sustainable solutions, as we say. The SDGs should be supported, and we hope that we can also elevate a little bit the awareness of both on the German side and on the Ghanaian side, in this case, of each other's sort of knowledge and expertise. Now, in order to keep people up to date of what is happening, I started last year a TUM Africa newsletter. I noticed that sometimes you got out of the plane and you meet your colleagues and you had no idea what they were doing, and that seems a bit odd. So I think it's good to inform ourselves a little bit and exchange some ideas, experiences, also tell with whom we are actually collaborating. Sometimes we work with the same people on both sides. So the TUM Africa newsletter is really a forum to exchange the ideas, to promote what you're doing, and also this event. I would like to include that in the next TUM newsletter, which will be out in July, early July. So if you allow me, you send me some pictures, then I'll include that. Good, that's it. If there are any news you want to share, or if you have some idea where you say, well, we would like to do that with another faculty or with colleagues, and maybe we look for some additional funding source, then don't hesitate to contact me. I'm very keen to work on that. So, thanks a lot for the time.
Thank you. So if anybody has any questions to Professor De Vries, you can approach him later in the network session. No, otherwise I will talk to you. So, yeah. So now we're going to move on to the organizer of this event, which is to eMpower Africa. Basically, you still don't know why are we doing this event. You still don't know even who I am. And you still don't know how all this story has started. So, my name is Wien. I knew Johannes 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, even more. And, is it working? And in 2018, April 2018, all the way was coronated by the official registration of our NGO to eMpower Africa. And Johannes will now, after knowing a bit about the strategy of Africa, will present to you the implementation from the perspective of to eMpower Africa. Johannes, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. So, hello everyone, I'm Johannes Winkelmeier. I'm a researcher and lecturer here at Technical University of Munich in the field of renewable and sustainable energy systems. And I'm also one of the co-founders of to eMpower Africa e.V. We are a legally registered non-profit organization and also accredited university group of TUM. Before you wonder about my appearance, I give a lecture or a project course about microgrids in developing countries. And a few years ago we started to do always after the course kind of excursion to such an off-grid system. In Europe you just have them in alpine huts. So you can imagine I just enjoyed the snow conditions in Italy last week in a little too much. So that's what happened then. But also when you watch a few faces more detailed, you can see that some of my students also enjoyed the sun a little too much. How did this all started? It was actually, I just realized yesterday, exactly 4 years ago I submitted a teaching concept for some funding for a award within TUM about renewable energy systems in developing countries. I knew I'm both technically and idealistically have a huge interest in The students have a huge interest, and there's more than 100 professors at TUM that somehow work with energy, and nobody did a focus on developing countries, which is quite surprising. So I started it, and it's quite grown fast. A few hundred students in the lecture, 100 applications for 15 places for lab courses. The students have been really keen on. So over the last 2-3 years, there have been a lot of student projects, master theses, and over the years this field got wider, so not just energy but also connected topics. And 1 year ago, me, students, colleagues thought, okay, we know now so much about this field, and we do not just want to do research, we want to implement our results. So that's why, as Rüm already mentioned, 1 year ago we hiked up to a hut, closed in for 2 days, and founded this NGO. A few months later, or actually half a year later, all the legal registration process was done, and now we're here. So what is our mission? We thought about in this hut what we want to do, what we not want to do. And we focus on the sustainable development, which includes business, for African communities, especially rural ones, through research-based solutions. So this can be a quite general slogan. So what is our focus regions? Our expertise on the one hand, and on the needs on the other hand. On the really technical side, it's energy, water and food. But we wanted this combined with the socio-economic parts of enabling business, getting access to finance, investment, and for a sustainable operation of each kind of systems, you need the education with it. And to make this really organically growing, of course, you need a network. This is still quite general, but now I dip a little into our research. So what's our idea about? There is, at least statistically, you clearly can say this poorest billion on the planet with about $1.5 a day. It's very connected that they do not have access to electricity. In our times, you need for economic development access to electricity. The interesting concepts like Mobisol, which in the end don't empower so much the economic growth, because there are some problems with, even with renewables, especially solar power. Everybody knows nowadays, and the high potential. So actually, you would imagine it's an easy game. You give African communities some solar modules. They have so much sun, so they can produce cheap electricity. The big problem is, on the one hand, the investment costs. As I think we will see later in the video, the interest rates in Africa spread from 8 to 50%, so not like here in Europe. A student of mine sitting in the room actually did a really precise economic analysis for Ghana. Equity interest rate is 30%, and Ghana is one of the most stable countries. Yeah, 30%. Yeah, tell this a German investor. And what is the outcome of this? That people in the rural communities with $1.5 per day can't afford the investment in these actually very economic renewable energy technologies, especially solar. So we thought about, okay, how can we change this problem? And our buzzword for this is productive loads. So that you think these energy systems or this electrification energy access, not just for this typical private consumption as it's usually thought, lights, television, air conditioning, which are for sure important for life quality, but they don't lead to any direct economic development. And thanks, I didn't expect that. So it doesn't help any investor. So me as an investor, I wouldn't give this person probably the money if I just would know, okay, it's still a high risk if the solar module that I sell solar modules I sell this community is just used for the private consumption. So that's why we thought about productive loads. And the number one unused economic potential in Africa, especially rural Africa, is agriculture. What is the problem right now with agriculture in Africa? Let's start with the potential. So when you forget about the real Sahara, and there are a lot of fertile soils in many places in Africa, and the climate conditions allow just 3, not just 1 maize harvest a year. So you could produce so much significantly more agriculture than it's actually here in Europe done. And another very relevant aspect, the salaries. Even you pay double, triple local price, it's the African farmer is still much, much cheaper than the European farmer. Why doesn't it not work? And again, electricity, because electricity is connected with the water grid. So in the rural communities who don't have electricity also don't have access to reliable water grid. So the farming is in all these communities depending on the rainfall. If there's a year with good rainfall, you really can see in the national data, the GDP is raising. If there's a very dry season, very dry rain season, there's critical economic situation in the country. How to solve this? You just use solar power with batteries. You connect, you produce the water on your own with water pumps, solar water pumps, and then you can do both all over the year agriculture, and actually more important, in between the years constant, because the groundwater level is much more constant over the years compared to the rainfall. So there is the possibility that economic structures grow. So that not, and nowadays the problem is if there is a good year, then some economic growth is starting, then there's a bad rain year and everything crashes down. With groundwater pumping, you can bring some certain stability in this. And so this looks already nice, because now the community has significantly improved agricultural output, so they are able to pay back their investments for the solar cells, for the batteries, for the water pumps, and also, in best case, this agricultural output is reducing the interest rate for an investor, because he sees now, okay, there's a directly linked economic activity which reduces the risk for my investment. But this is not the whole picture, because when you would do such a system, you still have the problem of battery storage. The major thing is it's the most expensive way to store is batteries, and it will keep for 5 to 20 years until the prices drop very much. But here the first answer is not to store the electricity into batteries, but to use water pumps, very flexible, so you can store the water much cheaper in tanks than the electricity in batteries. But this would be still not sufficient. The very nice thing is that of the plant, can be maize, tomato, whatever you imagine, you don't sell the whole plant. There's always some residue, we call it biomass waste. So think about the green parts of a maize plant. You just sell on the market the yellow part. The green part is usually thrown on the field to keep the nutrients. We keep also the energy content by producing biogas and afterwards turning this into electricity by gas engines. And this gas, this biogas enables that you have 100% renewable energy supply with about 60% solar power, 40% biogas, and you need just very little batteries, so your electricity prices are outstanding low. Another very nice side effect of this, perhaps whom of you is into biogas digestion, when you produce biogas, you get a kind of ash slurry, which is nothing different than a highly concentrated organic fertilizer. So we can fertilize half of our fields with this organic fertilizer. So this is our idea. Since 2 years we are working extensively on modeling this deeper and deeper, and in 2020 I'm quite sure we can publish our modeling tool Austria, which is abbreviation for optimization software for developing rural infrastructure in Africa, where exactly this process you just have to, in this software tool, you type in the GPS data of your community, you fill in a few information like size of the community, what are the preferred crops to be grown, what are the preferred crops to be consumed, market prices and so on. And this model tool will do quite challenging calculations here at LZ and will send back the kind of a small business concept to the user, which tells you how much PV do I need, how much water pump capacity, which field size is best, that the groundwater is not running dry, the nutrients in the soil are not getting out, and which kind of crops do I sell, how much do I pay back every year. This whole set will be shown by this tool. And by the not so user-friendly version of this tool we have already now, that you get a few data. Right now, when we assume we are a social entrepreneur and we do agriculture, we sell agricultural products as well as electricity, and give the very little water demand for the people for free, because it's not so significant. Without connecting the energy water sector to the food sector, so not doing water pumping for agriculture, you end up with 50 to 100 cents per kilowatt hour. When you combine it, you have a more efficient system, you come up at 30 to 60, and with the same conservative critical input data, when you combine it with the biogas, you can end up giving, based on the data we have, and they are from the ground, you could provide kind of free electricity to the community because of the high profitability of your agriculture business. Because then you can produce agricultural products as perhaps the only one in your region in a dry season when nobody else is producing. So this is the research theory. This is for nothing. So what is our work? On the one hand, we analyze, so we go to the communities, take them about renewable energy potential. Here, for example, it's about wind and solar power. We figured 2 years ago out that small-scale wind power is not so much the solution, so we go just on solar power right now. We also do soil groundwater analysis with the very nice support of Professor Disse, thank you. To know how much groundwater can we pump, what is the fertility of the soil, but we also do socio-economic surveys and workshops with the community to really know, okay, what are the social constraints, economic constraints, what are social needs, economic needs. So this is always this analyze part we do first, and then with our modeling tools we kind of design a system, and this is to be implemented. So these and all the other pictures you see are from our first partner community, St. Rupert Mine in Zimbabwe. This is the person in charge there. You see our solar module. Now here our freshly installed water pump. And this is 1 week old. This is our first biogas system here in the community. So in a few weeks we will be able, we have the first, as far as we know, the first really closed-loop energy water food system globally. So we have this solar power generation, feeding water pumps, enhancing agriculture, and allowing biogas electrification by the increased biowaste production. But this is just the first 2 parts. We want to sustain the systems, and the first part of sustaining is teaching. So we do different levels of teaching, like here you can see a kind of introduction course into renewable energies for the high school kids, but also when it's about the operation of the system, the accounting, for example, is a crucial part, which is in rural communities often not properly done, as well as spreading the news. So here you can see a photo where I have been with 9 TUL students on a renewable energy conference in Lesotho, where actually a few of the posters over there have been introduced, and we made great connections, like with the Africa boss of the World Food Programme being one of the ones defining the Sustainable Development Goals. So this was really good experience. It's also important to spread the word, yeah? Not just to do your stuff for your own, spread the word. So here, our team, our sections, these are kind of the board, not so important, but we have different sections so that we have a clear structure from management operations, but also marketing funding is very important. Durin, who organized greatly this event, thanks a lot. And Stefan, who is our IT and finance guard. So the webpage, for example, is on him. And of course, many, many more. A lot of them are, or some of them are here today. Students, volunteers who support us by administrative work, on the ground in African communities, or just by the research. We have a lot of partners. Some of them, of course, first of all, it's the Technical University, where we get our research results greatly done. The World Food Program, same as TUM Africa, we cooperate with the KNUST. So our next projects will be around Kumasi in Ghana, Lorenz for the water pumps, Ökobit for biogas, and many, many more. So last but not least, we would be very happy when you get involved, when you're young, do your research, internship, master thesis, lab course with us, or just volunteer for 3 months on the ground on a certain position, or here for any administrative stuff in Munich. When you're a little elder, we are very happy for your sponsoring. Exactly. Here you find our contact data. Thanks a lot for your attention.
We're running a little bit late. Thank you very much, Johannes. Let's have let's put our hands together for Johannes for the pitch. Thank you. So now we're gonna move to our next section, next long section, which is the panel discussion around the topic of social-driven business and research. Now and how, and I would like to invite Anurag from our team, who is the responsible in eMpower Africa for the operations, so he knows a lot about what's going on the ground. He's going to be a hard moderator. So, Anurag, the floor is yours for the next 1.5 hours.
Okay.
And here you go.
So you're not going home today. So. That's a good thing about Europe, you know, it's like I come from India, I was so scared when I first came here and I told my mom the sunset is at around 9:30, she was, this cannot be. But it is, so it is, it's good. Cool, so thank you for being here and thank you for being part of this journey, we're just starting. So let's have a nice calm talk now. You know? Like, try to make these people uncomfortable. Let's do it this way. We just invite our panelists up here to grace the stage. Maybe we sit the way the pictures are so people match the picture to the person. Something like this. But yeah, the idea of today is to talk about social impact driven business and research. So how to do it now and how to do it how. It's a question that maybe sounds a bit cliched, but it's not actually. I mean, that's the problem with every buzzword. Everybody talks about artificial intelligence, nobody understands it. So that's the same way about Africa. It's a buzzword. Everybody wants to talk about it, feel good by talking about it, but what is it really? I mean, do we really talk about this, the nitty-gritty of it? So let's try to do that today, okay? So let's give a big round of applause for our panelists, and let's have you here. It's okay. That's, by the way, Professor Bells and Alessandro. This one. It's no problem. Yeah. Okay, so quick word of introduction for everybody, I think, is in order. So let's start with the far end. Mr. Schreiber, I'm sorry, couldn't talk to you before the event. You were busy mingling anyways. So, I mean, if you talk about the cliched serial entrepreneur, that's him right there. I think he has done everything from textiles, impact investment, energy crowdfunding, organic agro, and blockchain. Something like this, right? Okay. His company, Africa Green Tech, I think you've seen the brochures around here that he so kindly distributed, has been named one of the top 3 clean tech companies by KIC, I think in 2015. I read somewhere in a magazine that his company is described the IKEA of energy because of the way they pack everything in one box. So, thank you, Torsten, for being here, and maybe you would like to share a few words.
Thank you to be here. Yeah, it's great to be on the TUM because together with Professor Belz and some students, we are really working on the ground. We just come back, Ada and I, from Mali, together with 4 students from the TUM, and it was a very special experience because Mali is in the moment in a bad security situation. So we had really kind of fun, but also a kind of fear. And it was a great experience for everybody, and I think we will see the results very soon. And so I feel home here. Yes, I think we can show a short video about our work. I think pictures are better than words. Perhaps I take the micro and explain a little bit because here I explained as the projector is a little bit not so noisy. Here you see pictures from Somaliland. It's one of our planned projects, and before I explained a little bit that our system is especially for very difficult zones because we can put everything in the container. And here you see Hamza. Hamza is a refugee. He comes with 1 year from Somalia. His parents flee from the war. And he moved last year back to Somalia to bring our project into the villages. So he is a very good example for the social impact what we have. And Hamza explained a little bit how impressive this is to be back in the country and helping his people. And Somaliland is a very interesting country because it's not accepted by the international community, but it's 22 years independent now. And as you know, perhaps from Somalia, as it's known as a failed state, is a very difficult region. And Aida and I, we like regions like this because there we can help. And so here you see us in our office, and we are both the founders. And here you see we have a Skype conference with our team in Mali, and Aida speaks the native languages from Mali, it's Bambara. So we are really close to the people. And here Aida explained that for her it's very important to help her people in her country, that they don't even have the idea to flee because we give them perspectives in their countries. Here you see our container production. So these containers, we are producing them completely. They are not some Chinese containers we changed. We really built the whole thing. Here you see the raw structure. And one of these containers can fit about 4,000 people in the village, because the amount of voltage is very little per user. So one of our power plants can serve a whole village. And this is the system is plug and play. It's complete, finished here in Germany, and it comes to the village in 24 hours. We are operational. Here you see some of our, this guy had a car accident last year and died. This is very sad to see, but these are our young engineers, and they are working in the field. Lorenz, for example, meanwhile he's 8 to 9 months a year in Africa. Here you see our system, what we developed for lifting the container from the truck, because you don't find cranes in the villages. And we train our people, and we bring also very much knowledge transfer to Africa.
Thank you so much, Torsten. Apologies for the speaker thing, but I mean, if we had a penny for every time that happened, we would have a new company. So, okay, so let's move on to our next panelist, Mr. Henley. Florian Henley from Polarstern is here, founder and CEO, Munich born and bred. And can we call Landshut Munich, or is that difficult?
Bavaria is okay.
Okay, Bavaria is okay. All right, blue and white then. Polarstern is a standard in green energy now. I think we can say it's close to being a brand name. I think we can say that. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Florian is obsessed with the word wirklich. I was hoping actually that you would bring some merchandise, and you did not disappoint. So this company goes with this 100% Ökostrom idea, 100% from hydropower and Ökogas from waste. That's the company motto. Interesting to know that Ökotest and Utopia, two German magazines who rate clean energy suppliers, have always rated Polarstern in the top end of German manufacturers. So welcome, Florian, and maybe a few words.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And it's the time for the presentation, or is it for a few words? So it's okay, I just start. And I think why we do, the reason is why are we all here, and the why is the most important thing. So I talk about that for just a few minutes, so no problem. And I think each generation has its main challenge. And in my opinion, our generation's challenge is climate change, fighting climate change, it's nothing new, but okay. But still, I'm convinced that it's my task. It's not the task of my sons. I hope so, and I think the good thing is we have everything we need. We have the technology, we have the knowledge, and we have more and more the awareness, and this is what we are working also on Polarstern, bringing the awareness, bringing solutions for the people to really to make their own energy transition, because it's always easy saying, okay, yes, it's a very important, it's the challenge of our generation, but what do you do? And what can you do, and what can do each of us? And this is what we try to do at Polarstern. We try to give the solutions, and by providing green electricity, especially to urban areas, but as climate doesn't care about national frontiers, it's a worldwide thing. So with each customer, in Germany, and right now we are focused on Germany, we enable also family in Cambodia, and together with Torsten in Mali, to have their own energy transition by building enabling microbiogas plants. Maybe you can switch to the next one. Yeah, thank you. And Polarstern is built up as a social business, and I think it's sad that I have to say that, hey, we are a social business, because it's just reasonable, and I think it's just common sense and straightforward. Being a social business, meaning you have impact, and your impact is not only making as much money as you can, but your impact is also a social and ecological impact. And you have this responsibility as an entrepreneur to do that, and not only to have one digit more or 1 zero more under your EBIT. And this is what we're doing at Polarstern, and that's why we jumped into this shark sea of energy supply in Germany, which is a very hard market. But if you survive there, you survive everywhere. And we're doing quite well, luckily. And this picture you saw, maybe you just jump once back. This is how we built the micro biogas plants in Cambodia. It's very, very down to earth, and so it was very fun. Not fun. I was very happy to hear your speech at the very beginning, because it's very, very similar to what we do in these countries. This combination, or not only providing energy, but also combining it with the life, the needs that people have there, and not what we think they have, and is very important, and it has a lot of impact. And this, for example, what we do is it's 20 euros per customer that we put together, and we are just funding. We're not financing. We are giving the equity to start the financing of these companies. No, it's not companies, but the micro biogas plants, and companies as well together. So that's the micro companies, exactly. And they refinance within 12 months. Why? Because they use the fertilizer to have about 30% more crops. And this is how and then it's a lot of more impact. They don't have to cook on open fire, which is really bad for health, obviously, etc., etc. They don't have to collect firewood, have more time, and they have gas light, etc. So it's a positive circle. You can start with just 20 euros in Germany, and I think that's a really great thing. And thank you for being here, talking about the ideas, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion, and also with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Florian. Always great to have people who believe in the idea of social business. I think that's really important, and we will discuss more about this today. We'll next move to, all right, when the screen comes back online, let's move to Professor Belz. That will not be the next slide. It will be a few slides later. Yep, there you go. All right, so let's move to Professor Frank Martin Belz. Thank you, Professor, for being here. Professor Belz has founded the chair of corporate sustainability in the year 2003, I think, in Munich. He has been the visiting professor at Aalto University, and also was at once upon a time the vice dean of the Doom School of Management. Professor Belz has written many books and has many publications, as any professor has, but his book, I would like to mention, Sustainable Marketability, was voted Germany's best business book in 2010 by the German Academic Association for Business Research. The German word abbreviation makes more sense. He also led a Horizon 2020 project, I think it was AU Innovate, which discussed the idea of like what an active end user, how would they be able to influence the sustainability of a life cycle of a product, and how they can manifest a clean economy. So very happy to have you here, Dr. Belz, and maybe a few words.
Thank you so much for your invitation and kind words of introduction. As you mentioned, I led a large-scale European project on sustainable entrepreneurship in Europe between 2014 and 2016. And thanks to that, I got to know great people like Thorsten Schreiber and Florian and many others. And I was inspired by them. And after the project, I was thinking, what's next? In 2017, 2018, and I mean, I talked to many founders in Europe, all over, from Finland to Spain to Germany, UK, and so on, but never beyond that. And then also as part of my personal commitment or political engagement, I thought, well, what about entrepreneurship in Africa? And that's exactly what we are doing now in mostly in research now, or what we started doing, also together with Thorsten and Africa Green Tech, as he just mentioned. I was really astonished or even shocked to learn that 600 million in Africa do not have any access to energy. I was really shocked by that number. And we are really interested in, once they have energy, what kind of difference does it make? And since I'm an entrepreneurship researcher, we want to know what kind of entrepreneurial activities unfold over time and what kind of consequences does it have. So we look at the villages selected and provided renewable energies by Africa Green Tech and others, and we look at the situation before and after the provision of energies and how we can enhance that in the future. And it was a really interesting experience for the students and my PhD student, and as you mentioned, we have some interesting first results.
Thank you, Professor Belch. We'll come back to those interesting results in a bit. Let's move on to Ms. Karen Hitze. Karen is, did I say that wrong? Hitze, right? Okay. Hitze. You know my first name, like it's Anurag. You know what that rhymes with in German, right? So I'm used to it. So Karen is a biologist, which is a bit strange for finding her here, but she's a biologist and she went into pharmaceuticals, was in senior management positions in the pharmaceutical companies and became an investment manager, then went into McKinsey to be a consultant. But then now she's here with the Yunus Social Business. So just as a background to Yunus Social Business, I hope everybody is aware who the Yunus in that name is. That's Nobel Peace Prize winner Mohammad Yunus, the father of microfinance. So he started this business to develop more social businesses around the world, and Karen today works as the managing director and the chief investment officer. I'm happy to have you here and looking forward to hear what you have to say. Maybe something about it.
Before I introduce myself, I would like to show a little video just to give one of the examples of companies we've been financing, and then I'll talk a little bit about us. And it has subtitles, so I don't need to comment on it.
You never know, it might work.
About 30% of population do not have access to clean drinking water. And as a result, waterborne illnesses like easily preventable waterborne illnesses like typhoid, diarrhea, dysentery, and cholera actually remain as #1 killer among children under the age of 5. People here boil on a daily basis to get their drinking water. When Spouts was in its concept stage, we were debating whether we wanted to turn it into a traditional, more conventional aid project where NGOs would do the production and distribute the filters for free to the people who are in need, versus turning the idea into a social enterprise and make it more sustainable over a long period of time. Since the social business is a business, it's one great thing about it. It's self-contained, it's sustainable. So all you have to do is to keep on repeating what you have done. You build one prototype. If it works, then you can make millions of them. My name is Amos, and I'm going to take you through the production process. This is zero clear. We get it from a nearby swamp. So the purpose of Black is to combine all the raw materials together. These are broken filters. So we also use them as a raw material. This is a diesel apex grinder, and that is the electric grinder. So Yunus Social Business partnered with Spouts of Water because we think it's a very promising business. And what we do is we provide them with financing to grow the business, to move to a new production site, and also actually to provide them with international mentors. Yunus Social Business provided us with much needed financing in order for us to invest in our new production facility for us to scale up our business. What is very good from those filters, very good
told that we are very okay.
Thanks for coming to Sponsor Water. Hope you guys have learned the production process. And I think people come and give us a visit next time and buy our filters.
I just want to give one example. So what we do at Human Social Business, we fund local enterprises, local social businesses in different developing emerging economies. We are active in India, we are active in East Africa, in Uganda and Kenya, and in Latin America, in Colombia and Brazil. And wherever we are active, in fact, we have local teams on the ground. So we are not doing it from here in Germany, because there's only so much you can do from here. But we have teams of 3, 4, 5 people on the ground in the countries who are from there. And they are also the ones not just providing the funding, but they're identifying the companies, of course, that we want to fund, but they are also providing support. So we connect them to mentors, but we also connect the companies to market. A big issue is also building things like structures. The organization will talk more about the support we do. And quickly, as you said, basically I started as a biologist trying to save the world. That was my original idea. And then I went to McKinsey, went into venture capital doing life science, and into management positions in biotech companies. And about 7 years ago, basically, I took a turn back and said, okay, now I think I've learned so many things. I really want to apply that more for, again, back with social purpose, combining the business side of it, but also the social side. I hope I can share a bit more of that with you later.
Thank you so much for the nice talk and the amazing video, Karen. We move to our last panelist to this introduction, Mr. Medici, an old friend of ours. He's also, he gives a lecture. He used to, I don't know, he stopped doing it. Why?
I was only like he's too successful now.
So, Mr. Medici is a founder and CTO. This is also a confusion. Are you a CEO or the CTO?
A CTO.
A CTO, okay.
Yeah, that's right. I was CEO.
You should change your LinkedIn. Something like this, yes. So Mr. Medici, he came with something about 20 years in software development. I think he had a business, and so he was already a veteran when he moved into social businesses. He founded this company, Enda Solar. I think you did microgrids in Tanzania, in Pakistan, in Nepal, and also a struggling economy called Switzerland. Then he formed Powerblocks in 2015. You are the world's first swarm-based EV battery system. Still claim that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. He is also AC. Okay.
There's Hydro Energy International.
Okay, all right. He's also a proponent of the Internet of Energy. So good to have you here again, and maybe a few more words.
Thanks a lot. First, thanks a lot for the invitation. Probably we can switch to the slides also. First of all, it's great to be here because for us, as you said, we do swarm electrification, but we also do swarm networking. So it's always very important to us to share ideas, to listen to other projects, to listen to other entrepreneurs and business ideas, and share this. But just to give you a brief introduction, what we do is we started, as we said, 10 years ago with mini-grid projects in Kenya, Tanzania, Pakistan, and all others. But we saw during this phase and with Enda Solar that it is quite complex. And if you look at the situation, for example, like in Nigeria, there was a very interesting study about how to electrify Nigeria. And if you look at that, there you see there is one part that will be electrified probably by grid lines, that are the red ones, and there are some big mini-grid projects, these are the blue spots, but then you see thousands and millions of these yellow small dots. And who do you think makes the engineering for that? That's just that there is not the time and there is nobody that can do this variety of these grids. There are small villages, there are hospitals, there are thousands and 100,000 of different situations. And what we thought then, we have to change the way how we make electricity projects and mini-grid projects. What we saw is, okay, there is a segment in the very lower range, there we have all these Pico systems and this solar home system that works quite well because it's easy to develop, it's easy to distribute, you have pay-as-you-go system, you can distribute hundreds and thousands of these systems, but there are a lot of limitations. If you want to go a little bit bigger, for example, if you want to use it for a small business unit, then and this unit grows, you have to replace the whole system. Then the other side is the big systems, you know, the big mini-grids. There are also very nice solutions that we worked with that work well, but there is a gap in between, because here you need a lot of engineering, here you distribute but it is limited, and in between there is a gap. So what we made is, we just tried to fill this gap based on a Lego principle. So we thought we just put everything in a box, but we make this box so intelligent that you can scale it like Lego. You just put a multiple box together and you get a bigger system. You get more energy creation, you get more storage, you get more power, so you can increase. If a small business starts with 1 unit and it grows and it is successful, then it can buy or lease a second one and grow. That's the principle. So we go away from this component-based system that at the end look like this in our experience in Africa, to a plug-and-play approach like this, and that's how the innovation came up with our Lego block power blocks that has everything integrated, but it can scale up. And just to make it short, because I think we probably have to go forward, what we do currently, we look for different applications. So we look which segments we can go in. For example, refugee camp electrification, disaster relief is a big issue. Our systems were used in Mozambique, in Indonesia. We will see that, for example, here. That is from Indonesia. After the disaster, immediately some of the Swiss humanitarian aid were flying in some of our devices and used it there. Even already on the airport, because at the airport they also didn't have power, so they had to print it out. So documents, put our power blocks out and started to print it. So you really can, within minutes, you can put up an energy system and you're very flexible, you can adapt it to the situation, and that's our approach. And what we also do now, here is from Angola, for example, where we immediately electrified a house just by plugging it together. What we now do, we look for these different applications, and we really focus on what Johannes was telling, we focus on small businesses. It's also a bit called, how we called it, it's guerrilla electrification. So we lease the units to small businesses, and they create the mini grids. So not we are building it as a business model, but they create it by themselves. So especially in countries where there are difficult regulations for mini grid, they just do it on the ground. So what we do, in fact, is we try to learn from the local culture. How are they doing things? How are they making business? And we try to build the basic building blocks that they can do so. So that's mainly our business here.
Thank you so much. So, that was a quick introduction to our panel, our illustrious panel here, and let's now dig deep, get our hands dirty. But before we do any of that, as I said before, when I was introducing the whole thing, I talked about this idea that how Africa has become a buzzword. It's like artificial intelligence, machine learning, neural networks, it's a buzzword, blockchain. So we need to do a status check next time. First, understand, like Professor Benz had a very interesting number there, 600 million unelectrified people live in Africa. But I think even then, like, do we really understand how much 600 million is? It's, I mean, 1,000, 10,000, maybe you get it. More than 1 million people lose sense, the tactile sense of how big the difference between 1 billion and 100 million is. Maybe not for me because I come from India, but for a German it's difficult. So
70%
let's
of the population. If you like this number better.
Exactly. But what everybody understands is money. So we go with money. And here is some numbers up there. So $27 billion is needed yearly in investment in Africa from now to 2030 for complete electrification. And that is the goal that has been set by the World Bank and all other monetary foundations. 2030 complete electrification in Africa, complete energy access. 27 billion, that's how it will take. Now that number is actually not that small, because 40 billion was the total EU investment in renewable energy, and they are supposed to be the rich ones. 28 billion is the entire budget of the US Department of Defense this year. So that's not a small amount of money. To add on top of that, you have 70% of the world's poor today, 2019, living in Africa. It used to be 50% 5 years ago, and now it's 70%. What is also interesting is the statistic I have here in the corner. There was this very interesting report came out by Global Justice Now in 2017, and it was about the money that is actually the reverse aid concept. And this is something we will go into. Everybody thinks Africa is a poor continent. Everybody needs aid. But in reality, 41 billion flowed out of Africa in 2015 to actually developed countries. More money comes out of Africa than goes in. That is the truth.
Is this a net number or only?
That's a net number. So they had something like 162 billion flowed into Africa in loans, remittances and aid, and 203 billion flowed out. A large component of that, I think something about 20 billion, is in illegal invoicing. So there is that as well. And so because we're all talking about electrification, that number right there at the far side is also important. 1.68% is the average electrification rate. So 1.86% more people are added to the electric grid every year on average since 1990 to 2016 in Africa. Now we are aiming complete electrification. For that to happen, that rate has to climb to 8.4%. So it's a daunting task right there. Okay? That's our baseline. That's what we base today's discussion on. Okay? So centering our thoughts on that. So then let's go into get a baseline from you all. So my first question really is based on the fact that, so we have every society today, like the so-called developed world today in Europe and North America at least, Rome was not built in a day. So it came from this industrial revolution, and then there was, maybe at some point after hundreds of years, there were vacuum tubes, and then we had transistors, and then suddenly I have a smartphone and every kid has a smartphone. So it didn't happen overnight. But what we're aiming for in Africa is some sort of a quantum leap. Has never happened in the history of mankind. We want to move from cooking with wood, make a direct jump to something that is swarm grid or something like this. So that if that happens, and it's magical if that happens, we'll take away something like at least 100 plus years of European evolution that we actually went through in Europe as society. So then my question is that, is this even possible? And if yes, and I hope the answer is yes because we are all here, how and where do you stand on this? So maybe we go from Alessandro.
I think to give the good answer first, it's possible. But I think it's also very difficult. So if we look, I mean, I don't tell you about the discussions I have with my board members if I come up with a big program in Africa once again, because they always want to make business in Europe, you know. So, but never mind, it is possible. I think what we have is really to learn from what was successful. For example, from the business model in communications. If you think about mobile phone, I don't have the numbers of investments in mobile phone, but there it worked. The leapfrogging worked. In energy, what we see, what is important is that the investments flow exactly in the projects that work. There are a lot of projects that didn't work, unfortunately, because probably there was no consumption in a village, nobody consumed the energy, so it was not working, or there was really only in the central areas around cities, so in the urban areas, but not in the rural areas. So I think what we, for example, do is we want to use data as a measurement for that. So we want to see where business models work. Where business models work, on the technical side, on the business side, but also on the socio-economic side. If we measure that and we use this information and the success rate there for directing additional investments in this direction, then it can work. Also the same from the technical models. That's why we want to do something that is very flexible, that you don't over-invest in a village. There must be, there are some situations where you probably don't need that much energy because people don't consume that much. So why making a big installation there, you know? So going in this direction.
I think the challenge is that you have to find really scalable solutions. And when we look for companies, we want to invest in companies, and you can take different approaches, obviously, but you need to find one is sustainable ways. I think business is a way to go because it really moves into much more long-term sustainability, which I think is really important. And the other aspect is if you look into the approach of companies, it needs to be something that is easily replicable. So I love this example where you say, you have building blocks is something where you multiply in an easy way. And a lot of the companies we invest in, they have a way where they basically have one core business model or business unit that becomes sustainable, but then they replicate it. And you need to be able to replicate in order to really get scale at a fast level. And if you look at Spouts of Water, the company that was shown in the video, for example, they basically took the easiest technology. That is not a high tech. I mean, you could see that. This is basically really easy technology, but it's something you can replicate. You can produce it locally. You don't need to import raw materials, so that's something you can do on the ground. And once you have established the process, you can replicate it in the country. You can also replicate the distribution. And that's really, I think, with all the approaches that you need to use that in order to really have scale there. I think that's the only way to go and how you can leapfrog. It's not always about some super technology, it's often about how to apply it and how to get it out on the ground.
Well, you talked about leapfrogging, or jumping, from no energy to renewable energies overnight, so to say. Actually, as you said, it's similar to many European countries, may it be Germany or may it be Finland 100 or 120 years ago. And I think we need, research and process data on that, and that's exactly why we are doing our research and to have a look at the impact. So if you provide energy to a village, what happens there in terms of entrepreneurship, but also in terms of the social relations, the health, and so on. And as a researcher, I'm open both for positive effects, but also to negative effects, for intended and unintended consequences. So we often assume, and many studies show, that it has a positive effect on productivity, for example, in farming or other areas. But something we also see is, for example, one example from Mali, we had a lady entertain in a restaurant. So thanks to the fact that she had energy, she had more business now. But then we had a closer look, and we could see that, actually she's still preparing her food with wood. And she's just using the energy for light, longer business hours, and music, which is an attraction to the customers. So, let's say she has more business, but still she uses wooden or biomass for cooking instead of electric devices. So I think that's something to be researched and also over time and to be seen.
Your question was, would it be possible? And I think the answer is from a technical point of view, easily. That's not the problem. So we have the technologies with great examples here, I think, and there's so many more on this planet. The main task is, and that has always been the same, you have to convince the people. So it's the most important thing is to change behavior. It's the same that people are in each country all over the world, they're almost at the same, have the same reluctance to change. We have this farm example in Germany, but you have exactly the same, for example, in Cambodia. So for example, our main task or of our partners in Cambodia is to build this the microbiogas plant, is to convince people, to show them that it works, that it's something serious, and that they really have the advantages, etc. And because from a just objective point of view, it's a no-brainer. But still, you have to convince people. You have to change behavior. You also have to change cultural behavior. You have not great examples, but very catching examples for that. So I think that's our main task. And to change culture and behavior just from one year to the other is very hard. But this is, I think, what we really have to do. And therefore, you have to give easy examples, and you have to make these examples. And this is what we're all working on.
Yeah, so I have lots to say to this question since I'm 10 years on the ground. First of all, I think we should stop to talk about Africa. These are 52 countries, and all these countries have their own identity. And it's a pity that only white people sit here. This is another question. So we should talk with the people and not over them. That's the second point I want to say. But I think you're working on this also. The question if it's possible to electrify Africa, yes, this is possible, technically, and same with Florian. But I think we have so many questions around this question. First of all, is the people who are in power worldwide, are they interested that this happens? This is a very important question. Are the richest leaders in countries like Mali, Niger, where we are working, are they interested that people have women have access to Wi-Fi, that they see what the world is saying? This is very strange, not strange, but heavy questions, because this is on the ground what really stop the procedure of getting renewables. The other aspect, what is Florian and I, we know each other very long, because we fight since 10 years about climate change, and we know us from my other venture from Better West. So for me, the reason why we founded Africa Green Tech was because I'm fighting against climate change. And climate change in the dimension of the continent like Africa, if you imagine that they now start creating coal power plants, yeah, and we have to leapfrog. If not, we have a disaster and catastrophic impact on the environment. And there's one number who has not access to electricity right now, but a very interesting question is how many people are depending on diesel electricity right now? Yeah, we have more than 250 gigawatt diesel gensets running in Africa each day. Yeah, and this is we fight against diesel. So this is not, we fighting for solar, we try to stop diesel gensets and bring the people to renewables. And one last aspect is very interesting. I don't say something against our Chinese friends, but they have really made not so good things on the African continent, and they sold very bad stuff, solar models. Even sometimes they printed them only on glass, so they are really not working. So the people have lost their trust in the technology. And this is really a pity, because we come to villages with solar models, and the people say solar is not working, because they have the bad experience with people who sell them bad stuff. Yeah? And this is a work what we all have to do to explain them that solar is working, and this is a reliable technology. And I think this is also a point what some people like Eike work on, and we too.
Interesting stuff. I think so. In summary, we can say that we agree that the technology has to be scalable. It has to be something that don't reinvent the wheel. The technology already exists. Understand the customer. So I think we can start by not calling it Africa and treating Kenya as Kenya and Nigeria as Nigeria. So that's interesting, and I think what Professor Belz also said about unintended consequences, that's also interesting to navigate. Like, to just electrify a village is probably not the end of the goal, it's the start. So we need to clamp on that as well. So that's an interesting start, and I would like to then go into the more nitty-gritty of it. So we have here 3 founders who have started their company. We have somebody who funds such company, and we have somebody who does the research that should hopefully one day become a company. So we should all know a bit about how to fund. So let's start there. So I'd like to start with maybe Torsten. I read interesting stories about government bonds and stuff were used to fund green tech. Is that true, or is that
government?
Some bonds? Bonds. Yes. So bonds were used, and you had you founded your own company, by the way, a crowdsourcing company, BetterVest, and you raised equity from that as well. While I was reading about you, one thing that a line I found, I think in the Guardian article, and it said you went to an investor and he said, if you need 100 million, come back.
Yeah, that's a true story.
So what that makes me think is, so is the issue there that, like, you were trying to do something good, for sure, that will affect people, but somehow it's not big enough to be come up to the surface. How do you fight that?
Good research. Yes, this story is real. It was on London. I was searching for investors, and I talked with some VC companies. More than 60% of all equity for startups coming from Great Britain. This is really interesting. So I was there. I was invited. Then all these people come with helicopters. So it was a little bit strange. And so they say they start with 100 million. Better it's 500. And on this phase we had our prototype crowdfunded with 100,000 euro. So we was far away. Meanwhile, the gap is a little bit better. And I really innovated in finance because the experience with crowdfunding and even with the crowdfunding scene was very important for me. Because before I was also political work with the Pirate Party, and so I know this idea of swarm, and this is very fascinating still, because people, like, we have so much power even in this room to change things. And then I saw that with crowdfunding I can't scale, because after the 5th container people was bored from the story. Okay, so we see that we can't scale with crowdfunding. So I tried to innovate the first bond, private bond, for institutional investors. And the first discussion we had with the GLS Bank, and they gave us the first million. So this was very important for us, and we started first Africa energy bond, I will say, where institutional investors can invest. And the problem was then that many investors said, oh, you are in Mali, you have always coup d'etat, and so we are afraid of political risks. And so I found a very, very old agreement between Mali and Germany. And this was from 1970, and it says that both countries secure their investors. So I go to the Ministry of BMWI in Germany, to Mr. Altmaier, and I ask him, what is with this agreement? Can I use it? Because I invest 10 million in Mali. And then they said, we didn't know that. Yeah? Because meanwhile this is on part of the European Union. But this old agreement was not cancelled because you don't want to have diplomatic problems with the countries. So Madame Merkel didn't like too much in the moment the stories with Mali, Niger, Burkina. She's there today, but so we had a very hard fight. My team was working 1.5 years by writing applications, and we didn't stop it. And on July last year, we get the first guarantee from the state of Germany for a sub-Saharan country ever. Yeah, and this was very important, because after this our investors start are secure to this risk. And this shows that if you are fighting for something, that it can work. Yeah? And I think these stories we have to spread because we need these small entrepreneurs on the ground. And the last answer to the question is the gap is enormous. The World Bank financing only big dams and things like this, and all these little entrepreneurs like Yunus do. They need not much money. They need 5,000 euro, 10,000 euro to start something, 50 perhaps, or this, okay, a little factory, perhaps 200, 400, yeah? But the institutional investors, they start with 100 million. So we need small funds and very, very good structures to bring these young entrepreneurs on the ground to their business.
It was nice that you talked about the Yunus people investing in the small entrepreneurs, because I wanted to come back to Karen next. On your website, you talk about being the middle investors. So that's your niche. You don't go for things. You go for things that are too big for microfinance, and nowhere in the realm of 100 million. So, what is interesting from what Torsten said is that he was able to unearth this 1970s bill. You said this rule. So yeah, so that's a I would say that's a creative financial loophole. But what is interesting is the Yunus Foundation also has a kind of such a interesting financial tool or like a innovation, you might say, to unlock this capital, which is called the social success net. So maybe you would like to explain to the crowd what that is.
So I'll take a step back before I start talking about the social success net. So one is, I think, what you're saying is we are financing companies which we say are in the missing middle, which is usually a size of between $100,000 and $500,000. And it's exactly what you're saying is the big problem is below that they will be finding some resources somewhere, they can get grants. And we also, remember, we're talking a lot to local entrepreneurs. We have all these Europeans sitting here who have access to the European funding markets and grants and guarantees of the German entities. We're talking a lot with local entrepreneurs who are from the country. They don't have that network of tapping into international grant funding, nor investors, nor crowdfunding or anything. So that's also a different target clientele, you could say, that we are focusing on. So one of the challenges we see is because we are totally focusing on social business, so that's very clearly impact first. We are providing loans, we're not providing grants. And at some stage we want that money back, but we're not looking for returns. We'll get some modest interest rate on it, but that's it. But what do you do now if a company grows and has to go to the next investor? It has to, maybe they don't get loans, but maybe they have to go to impact investors, maybe venture capital. What does it do with a company if you do that? I worked 10 years in venture capital, so I know what the mandate is if you work in venture capital. It's about making money. Somebody said here like 30% on equity. Honestly, that's what we want in venture capital for sure. In Africa for sure as well, but also in Europe. So just how do you bridge that that expectation? You need to get more money in there, but you also want to stay true to your mission, to what you want to achieve. So what we've started innovating now, and it's not standard yet, but we've put out one pilot in Uganda, which is an outcome payment. It's a structure basically a foundation is guaranteeing the return, provided that the company achieves the impact it's focusing on. For us, in that case, it's water filters. It's not that one. It's another company called Impact Water. They're selling water systems to schools. And the idea is that, so for every water system they are selling, which the school can pay off over about 1.5 years, they can serve 500 students for the whole day with clean water, which is super efficient. And again, climate warming, these schools don't boil the water anymore, but it's basically a filtering process. So it's much more energy efficient. It doesn't use, it does save the CO2. They're also partly carbon credit finance. The outcome payment, what it allows is that you can bring in a normal investor. They will get the return if the company achieves its impact, because that is then funded by the foundation. But the company itself will be able to pay back the principal. So you have complete alignment between an investor on the outcome side, on the impact that you want to create, selling these filter systems. The more filter systems they sell to the schools, the more they prove they run, the more return the investors will get. But the company can totally focus on what they always wanted to do while being financially sustainable.
And the foundation is financed by grants?
The foundation, in that, it's a different foundation. This is not UNOS. I mean, this is like, in that case, the Rockefeller Foundation, which is funding the pilot. And their goal is to solve the water problem. For them, the mission is they want to solve the water problem. It's much more efficient doing that with a business than doing it with a pure NGO. So they get what they want, that is solving water problem. The investors will get a return, and the company can just focus on what they want to do. We've piloted it now, and at the moment we're working on scaling that up in India, in fact. So we are, we've just launched a scale-up project to see how we can take that to a different level now.
Very interesting that it's coming to India now, because groundwater crisis is going through the roofs in big Indian metropolises these days. The lakes and the groundwater is drying up. So that's a really a place to go. Interesting, you said at some point when you talked about the access to conventional funding in EAM. I would like to, that's why I go to Mr. Henley over there, he took the conventional route, I would say, because he went through the Exist Grundstipendium for all founders who are working in Germany and have a startup idea that comes from some research initiative. So maybe Florian, you could talk a bit about what is Exist to the crowd, and I think people know about it, but where did it take you, and was that all?
Thorsten just told me, can you still remember? Yes, I can still remember. And that, so this is about the German ecosystem. And there's really this one thing, which was our nucleus, it's called Exist. So if is here someone who was planning to fund something? Yeah, see. So then this Exist, although it sounds very boring, etc., but it's a really good program for the start. So it's 100,000 euros, now I think it's a bit more, and that enables you to really to have a more than easy start. And still you have to build a proper business, and you have to find some additional money, because with 100,000 euros usually you're not going that far. But still it's a very good program. This is how we started Collage, and we made it much easier. And still we had then we, of course, we needed more money, and then we got we were able to convince a business angel, a private person, more or less to give us his money on our nose, and just an idea and maybe some catching idea, but then that was the second step for us. But the biggest step was then the next, where we needed not 100,000 but more, almost roughly around €1 million. And we talked to a lot of VCs, obviously, and we got the conventional way. And we always had the problem that the VCs were very interested, but we realized quite fast that we really had the problem. You were just telling us that they said, okay, it's a great idea and we like social business, but listen, that's just an example, but listen, this 20 euros, I think that's really cool, we should keep that, but wouldn't it work with 10 euros as well? Because you have the same message, you still do something good, and in the energy business, it's low margin, lowest margin business. So 10 euros is per customer per year. It's a lot of money for us. And so we have always had these discussions, and it's very tempting to go for the easy money if you already see it. And we had at least three examples where we refused the money, and we got back and said, no, this is not what we wanted to do, only because we get the money and you think we went through, and no, we don't do that. But it's very hard, because it's also very tempting, and to stay and to stick to your mission, and or especially vision, is not always easy. It sounds like all this glamour and nice, and it's successful. Yes, it is successful and it's nice, but wasn't always that easy. And also for us, money is tempting. So far, we refused, and we stick to our line. I think now we are through, which is good. But it's not that easy.
It's a good note to end at. It's not that easy to refuse money. You can talk all the way about social business, but $1 million is $1 million. So
no, that means that conventional investors have to be refused if they are not following the impact mission of the founder. Yeah. That's the story.
That's true. So that we will come back to that when we talk about how to profit and how to innovate and what does profit actually mean. But just sticking to that funding bit for a bit, maybe I would like to go to Professor Wells. So there's this concept of effective altruism that is taking shape these days in the world, where people say, well, if I work in McKinsey, should I quit my job and do a Karen, or should I just make my 1 million and give 100,000 of it to somebody, to Karen, and then she can do the best because she knows best what to do. I don't. So there's this idea that we can keep doing our capitalistic life, but we just give the money instead and let other people do it. Is that something it has got a bit of traction in Silicon Valley? I think Dustin Moskovich, the Facebook founder, he started this whole campaign of convincing more peers to go into it. Is that something that can be used to unlock this gap we have on people who want to give money and have a social impact and people who want that money?
You mean to change the system?
That's the goal.
Well, let's put it like this. I would be skeptical because it's like it's half-hearted and.
I ask more in terms of that. This is better, right? Just talk. So we should just talk. I ask in a sense that so there are a lot of people who want to invest, who have done a job where they have earned a lot of money and they want to be philanthropists. So the idea of effective altruism is that rather than quitting your job and taking, let's say, 1 hour out every week to work at a soup kitchen, that 1 hour actually you earn a lot of money. So why not donate the money you earn in that 1 hour instead and give it to somebody who can do better with it? Give it to UNICEF or WHO or somebody. So that's the idea. Is that something that can take some sort of a global movement where we implore every CEO to do that? Or is that some way to unlock this deficit in capital that social businesses face? That's my question.
It would be kind of donation-based. What I see after talking to dozens of different founders, I see 2 different groups. And one group is, a young group, like Florian and Jakob and many others. And they see after their studies at an early age, let's say before 30, that we need a change, that we have to change and combat the climate change and tackle the issues. And they do it right away. And then I see a different group, including Thorsten, for example. He was in his former life, 10 or 15 years ago, he was in the fashion business and making a lot of money and so on. But then somehow they have some kind of revelations and so on. And they want to make a change, or change course, midterm.
I'm older. 15 years.
And that's something I see a lot from sustainable founders as well. But when it comes to foundations like the Gates Foundations or Rockefeller Foundation, it's kind of ambiguous, I think, because you also have to look at how they made the money, and then they're doing good things nowadays with the foundation, but then you cannot neglect the fact how they make the money. So an ethical question I also raise in teaching is,
if you make your money by selling arms, you know, and then you donate it, is that a good thing?
Yeah, especially with the Windows updates we keep receiving. I'm not sure if Bill Gates is as big as he thinks he is. But yeah, let's not slander him. He's doing good business. But Alessandro, coming back to you to just tie a bow around this starting discussion. So you were a seasoned businessman by the time you went into Powerbox, by the experience from Solar and so on. Did that help a lot, or were you still hurdled with the same problems the others here have talked about?
The reason why I changed over, and I had a really good life with my IT business, and I could go forever with that. But the reason was I wanted to make a change. I wanted first to look what I do with the second half of my life. I wanted to stop with this IT and do something useful, not end as Bill Gates. No, and I've after a 2-year world trip, I found out that energy could be very interesting, and there is a huge opportunity. So that's why I changed over, and luckily after we won this one award with our concept, we had nothing at the beginning, to be honest. So our first financing was kind of a pajama financing. So in the pajama we made some nice slides, some renderings, and then we presented it with having nothing. You know, we didn't even know if it works. But some other people liked it and gave us some money, so we started. So that's why it's kind of pajama financing. Now it's probably a little bit different, because now we go in the bigger programs, and there it changes. And I would say now we really have this challenge that our network tells us, let's take Shell also as an investor, and these and so on. And now we really, I as a founder struggle, is this now good or bad? Should we take the money and do something good or not? So it's really a difficult question at the moment in how to finance it, if it's now really growing, taking which, is it really important, which investors you take, and how to go forward. To be honest, I don't know yet. Because
would you take money from Shell?
I'm not sure, me not, but I'm not alone now, you know. I don't have more than 50% of the company, so I can't decide alone, and I have some board members that want money from Shell, so it's a big discussion.
So that's a nice ambiguous note to leave there. I mean, we do not live in a world of black and white, so there is always a spectrum to things, so maybe somewhere you take a stand and somewhere you don't. But what is interesting from this discussion is, I think we discussed a couple, or at least 3 or 4 different funding avenues that a new entrepreneur could take. Do like Torsten and just harass people until they give you their money. The government of Germany in this case, which is, I mean, kudos to you, you were able to do that. And I'm pretty sure, as you said, that when there is a will, there is a way, so you would find a way if you are really that way. And we would go through the research avenue that Florian went, or just look at the Rolodex and make a pajama presentation, something like that. But yeah, that's I think a good start. But I think now let's move to this second part, which was part of, which is I think in our topic for the day, it's this social impact driven. Impact happens when you innovate. Impact doesn't happen out of the blue. If you reinvent if you just sell the same thing again and again, you won't have an impact. So you want to innovate. We want to innovate in Africa, apologies, African continent. Now the thing is, like, there is this whole thing of the Global Innovation Index. I think it's a non-profit. I think they do a lot of research on different factors. I think it's quite comprehensive. They listed 126 countries in 2017 was the last one, I think. And except South Africa, every single African country was in the bottom half. Majority were actually in the lowest quantile. Now that's troubling. About 0.5% of the global patents in 2017 came out of Africa. So I think you talked about, Torsten, and started like about this transferring knowledge and so on, and like, you know, we want people to innovate. The innovation, if we can innovate as much as I want in Germany, that's not going to actually light the flame in Africa. So how do we transfer this, and how do we get the innovation actually happening in the African continent? So maybe I would like to start with Karen, I mean, you have mentored so many companies in Africa and Uganda, especially. We saw an example. How do you take into account this knowledge transfer? How do you ensure this?
That's a challenging question. I think whenever you talk, I mean, the innovation you're talking about is all technology innovation. And I think, to be honest, you need to think about it much more broadly. And one of the challenges you also mentioned was that it's not just about the technology, but how do you get people to use it? And I think a lot of the innovation, I think, because we forget about that, lies in the way how you deliver. So it's not about the technology. If you look at Spouts, I mean, this is not high tech at all. Impact Water, the company we fund with filter systems, this has nothing to do with high tech. Sorry, yes. I have a little problem here. And I have to switch it on.
That's the right one.
No, this is on. Yes.
It's on?
Yeah.
Okay, now it's on. Okay. So it wasn't me for once. But I really think innovation has to be thought about much more broadly. About how do I deliver? How do I work with smallholder farmers in an efficient way where I don't kill myself, but I'm sourcing from 10,000 different farmers rather than 2 or 3 big plantations. And a lot of the innovation that I see in the companies that we fund is not so much about the technology necessarily. It's more about finding the right technology for the context. And I think that's where the local expertise is so hugely important. It's not about us having a great technology development here at TUM, and I totally love what we do, but it's not just about that, but it's really about how do I use the appropriate technology and package it in a way, and it can be already invented, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter where it comes from, and then deliver it in the way where it's most appropriate. So I think for us, the knowledge trend, in fact, that's why we fund entrepreneurs. We don't fund technology, we fund the entrepreneurs behind it, because they are the ones who already have thought about how they can deliver that, how they can package it. They have figured out the business model and they've tested it. And where we help them is more on, so the knowledge transfer that we are doing is more on the, how do I now scale that business? How do I develop good governance structures, internal processes that I can really replicate that model and scale it up in a sustainable way? Because that's the challenge of a startup company. And it's totally, it's not important if it's a social startup or if it's just a normal startup. The place where startups fail is when they want to scale. And this is, I think, where we in fact come in a lot, where we help them implement the right structures, the right team, scaling up the team, scaling up the processes, the technology backbone behind it, so they can really go through the roof. And then the hockey stick is really, it's a bread and butter business. It's not Facebook. But how do I roll it out in a country that's very regional, last mile distribution, things like that.
So, I mean, I think the key message there is, I think, is that you don't have to bring something new to innovate. Innovation can be in different forms and not just something tangible you put in your hand. But I think that I would like to ask Dr. Bells, maybe. So there is this. So I mean, when I'm not doing this, I try to do research. I have not done anything, but hopefully one day I will do something. But the idea here is that, so let's say that I was from Africa, and I am one of the many people who might read or hear about this discussion. They're listening to this now. So you are a researcher in Africa, and what do you research on? So I mean, I think as a ground rule for scientific ethos is that science is unbounded. You do what you like best. You know, there is the world to conquer. But then if I come from Africa, should I be then thinking more that no, it's less important for me to find how blockchain scales, but more about how do I electrify villages or something like this. Like, it's not a yes or no question. It's just a question like, should we try to motivate research in certain pathways that are most beneficial for certain communities or countries for that matter, or should we let science just take its way and innovation will come organically?
As Karen said, I think we have to think about innovation in a broader sense, and not just technological innovation, but also social innovations, as you mentioned before. And when we talk about TUM, for example, and our responsibility, and I think my colleague Walter Tafis is doing great work, and I'm trying to follow up on that. I have contacts with Knus now, and we are applying for a research grant. And as part of this research, we want to build renewable energy systems in the rural areas. But another part, and it's about multiplying TUM, is also building an entrepreneurial ecosystem in both at KNUS, in the main capital, but also in the rural areas. And I think that's how you can innovate and become entrepreneurial. And it doesn't take over time. I mean, it's the same here. I mean, 20 years ago, we didn't have that. And it just, developed in the last couple of years. When I studied in the 1980s, we didn't even think about becoming an entrepreneur. I mean, we thought about becoming consultants or working in a bank or for a consumer company or something. And nowadays, especially at TUM, there's this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and I think this is really important to implement there as well, on all levels.
Right. But I think that's where I jump to Torsten, because I don't think you ever wanted to be a banker. I think that was never in the scheme of things.
Yeah, actually, I'm a little bit more radical in this question, so I even don't know if I should speak, because this is really a thing what is touching me.
Allow me to question first. So the question.
Another question.
So the question is that we are talking about innovation here. So I mean, you have this, as I said, like this IKEA of PV, this one box to rule them all kind of philosophy, hassle-free. Just take a shipping container and drop it in the middle of a village. You have a grid, okay? But maybe that's not innovative enough, because that's just one tech. PV exists, battery exists, putting it in a box is, well, okay. But what I'm interested is that you are now trying to go into other things, like you're partnering with Florian into getting these biogases in there and so on. So the question is that, can there be established tech, like let's say PV, that can be put in the middle of a village, that creates a domino effect of innovation in other disciplines, like how irrigation is done, how food is grown, how people grow, how people have an income. So should we, before rejecting the fact that no, technology innovation is not the thing, let's focus on social, maybe we should lean on established technology to create this effect that allows other people to have this social innovation. Do you think that's something that motivates?
So I want to thank you. I will hire you because you explained my business concept. That's Africa Green Tech. The container and the electrification is only the beginning. We create an ecosystem with cool chain. We try to bring what is the English word for bio? Organic. Organic certification from Europe, so that people can even export their stuff to Europe. And Africa is, from the agriculture side, very, very interesting, because there is no pesticides, there is no, the traditional way to crop stuff is very, for generations. They even know how they can, if you give them small things, electricity and water is one point, what he said on the beginning, but later then their business are growing like an oasis. It's crazy what we see after 1 year in the village where we established a station. But let me please, because this is, I think, very clear. It's logical, because this is the base infrastructure. Electricity, water. I miss a lot education in all discussions all the time, because we working with people, 90% are analphabets. So it's even difficult to explain them things. You can't give them a manual for their power box, because they can't read it. So we start to make comics now and show the people with pictures and pictograms how the station works. But I think a very important question for the end, and we can step this into the crowd for the discussion with the food, is if we don't need really a radical change of the system. And my thesis is, yes, philanthropy is not working anymore. 40 years we see the side effects of corruption, of even concentrating power on people like Bill Gates. I have nothing against him personally, but if you see how much power this foundation has today, on the ground. That's not amazing. It's crazy. Yeah, and we see that very rich people, even like the Facebook founder, they transfer all their wealth into a foundation, avoiding taxes in their home countries. And these countries, like states, they can also use this money to create kindergartens and streets. And these effects are not discussed in the scene. So I think, and this is my last word for this, is I think social or sustainable entrepreneurship is a future system for our economy, because we have to switch from the GDP and this hateful statistic, what you say, yeah, what make a change between developed countries and undeveloped countries. Hey, are we developed? Really? Yeah? What we do with our old people? Yeah? Do you see how people get elder in a family in Africa? They die with their little boys. Here we put our dads and moms into horrible stations and don't see them, don't visit them. We are not developed, sorry. Yeah, we lost everything what we have reached, and this is the truth. So I even want not to talk about development countries. For us, this is the global south.
I was not expecting that we would go there, but thank you for bringing that up. You echo the sentiment of a lot of people who are, especially in the post-Brexit and Trumpian era, discussing these things. Florian, maybe a quick, just a quick word on you on this thing. We were talking before the event, and you said like, I said we will talk about innovation, and you said, well, did we innovate even? That was mighty grand of you to accept that Ökostrom, like this green electricity, is not something that was innovated. It just worked in your case. So with that experience in mind, like let's say a PV business, okay, there are hundreds of companies that are doing that. For something like that to work, where should the company focus? You have an established market, but you want to work.
Yeah, I think that's a good example that innovation, what we already said, so it's nothing new. It's not only about products. So if we talk about innovation, it's always about something new. It's just something, sometimes you have to put some other dots together and market it different, or put it or target another group, or just combine like a simple trading business, like it's energy supply. It's not that simple, but it's quite straightforward with another idea of doing business. That's what you just said.
But it's truth. Yeah, your point is truth. Okay,
Yes.
Wirklich. Everybody talks about Ökostrom in Germany, but if you look to the reality, it's not Ökostrom. Okay, it's virtual Ökostrom. But you doing the right thing, and that's the reason why you're successful.
Yeah, but that's what I want. That's what I wanted to say. It's not only about this something very new and about some new innovation, etc. We're also doing that, but it's something not because we're social business, because we like what what we're working on. But it's just maybe then the innovation. What we did is being honest or being authentic, or and not just kind of a marketing stuff.
It's a strange world we live in, where being honest is an innovation.
Yes.
But that's what it is. Sandro wanted to say something, and I mean, you talk about this frugal innovation. Maybe I would like you to touch upon that.
Yeah, but during the discussion, what I like to say, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think what we, for example, do, I mean, we are a social business, but to be really honest, we're just doing business locally. We are interested to doing business in Africa. With that, we are different from other countries or other companies who are just scared by these markets, you know. So what we do there is not different what we would do here. We look at the market, we look at the opportunity, we start to talk to them, we listen to the culture, we look at the customers, and then we do business with these guys. And we do it on a really eye level, you know, as we do it normally. You don't talk from the top down to the customer and you have to do this and we give you money. That's not the way how you do business here. And that's exactly what we do down there. And then sure, we bring in innovation, but it's also locally. And then the only difference, what I think what we do, we look that we don't pull all the money out of the country. So we build the value chain locally, we let the money grow inside, and then we scale up locally. That's probably a difference that we look that the money keeps into the country, and we just pull out what we need to grow ourselves. You know, so that's probably the difference. But to be honest, it's the same like doing business here. It's not that I always feel I'm doing something really good. I just do business. I started with selling cows in Kenya. And that was the best fun I ever had. I mean, and that's how you learn to do business in Africa, selling cows.
So I think what's interesting there is that you just remove the embellishments from the term social business, just said that is pure business. I mean, if you read a book of business in like the early 1900s, maybe this is what they would have said. It's just that we don't think of it as business anymore because we have somehow associated business to becoming rich. And so let's come back to that. That's my next big topic to talk about. This being rich or the profit, how to profit. So we talked about how to fund, how to innovate. Let's talk about how to profit. I mean, it is a business. That's the name up there, and that is what we are all doing. We all agree at the ground level that charity is not the solution, philanthropy is not the solution. We have to do business, empower the people to earn their money. Okay. So I mean. What is interesting is that in the time of like Robert McNamara and all those 70s when these International Monetary Foundation and World Bank, they moved into funding this so-called developing emerging economies, they all at that time focused on these grand social policies, you know, vaccinations, eliminate malaria, cut down AIDS, you know, and introduce family planning. It's only quite recent, I think in 2013 was when the World Bank president made the call that no, we move to reduction of extreme poverty by 2030. That is the only aim. Growth is growth, period. There is the thing that people need is money. The poor people that they need is money. They don't need any amount of renewable energy is not going to change that. You need the money to start with the bells and whistles around it. So with that in mind, so there is a case there where you want people to become more and more entrepreneurial. So there is a case for having money. So maybe like start with Dr. Pence. So if you think of now proposing a business model in this, we know the stark impoverished kind of, at least the idea that we say the 70% of the poor live in the African continent. Maybe you want to do a business model here in this country. Now how do you recuperate your costs? If you want to even recuperate your costs. And to make it even harder, the answer, maybe let's say that we do it with strict business ethics, ethical wages, clean energy, and a trickle-down economics. How do we do this? We do not want to create another capitalistic society in Africa because that's not going to end well. So how do we do this business model?
I think sustainable entrepreneurship is the answer, really considering economic, ecological, and social aspects at the same time and trying to balance them, which is really tricky and difficult. As you mentioned, as founders, for example, especially in the beginning of a business, you are in need of financing and funding, and it's really tempting to get the money. So here you have the balance between principles and profits and so on. So it is tricky, but I think that's the answer. Okay. Both for social enterprises on an organization level and the social capitalism on a more societal level as Yunus envisions.
Sorry, yeah. If a man may add, it's not something about this. What did you say? The South?
The global South.
The global South.
It's another word for
global North and global South.
So it's not about the global South or developed or not developed countries. It's about it's for the whole planet. Because also we have a problem with our business system. we have to change it. And this is what you said, you have to be more radical. It's not about, hey, what we can do here and there. It's about how, when I'm a bit younger, and I studied business, international business, all this very conventional way, and I also wanted to go to investment banking, blah, blah, blah. But when I studied, and I finished in 2005, nobody talked about social or entrepreneurship, etc. And now it's really changing, and we have this movement. We're Friday for Future, etc. So, and I think that's a good answer, and which really adds to that. So we have to do it all over the world.
But that's exactly what I was trying to come to, because I mean, when I said to profit, when I said to profit, I meant to come to actually you, Florian, because somewhere, I don't know where exactly, but somewhere on your website there's a very, very nice phrase that I like. It's called meaningful money. So money just by itself, if it's earned by selling softwares and just doing nothing in the sides, maybe is not that meaningful. So the concept, so we need to redefine what is profit. Profit is not just having money in your account, it's about what you did with that money. And so that's why, maybe come back shortly to your National Biodigester program in Cambodia. So just to make that clear, so you pay 20 euros for every customer of Polarstern to build these biodigesters in Cambodia, and that is reflected on this meaningful money on your balance sheet. Sorry.
It's one part of it.
It's one part of it. So maybe just expand on that and see how. So my question is how did your industry peers react when you did something like that? I mean, did they get motivated? Are there more people doing this, or what? They look at you strange, why?
Our industry is in energy industry, and it's a very conventional industry, or very conservative industry. So we are not a role model for the whole energy system in Germany or in the world. But we try to have as much impact as we can, and also for each culture, for each country, its impact. So for example, in Cambodia, it's 20 euros to build micro-biogas plants. But this is no role model for E.ON or something. But we also do this decentralized digital energy, new energy market, which is a role model for Europe. So companies are following our role model, but not for example, not for the micro-biogas plants.
Okay. And then maybe Torsten, you come on that, because you partner with Polarstern in Mali, and you do the biogas plant. So where did that motivate you? So first of all, did that motivate you because of it would have a financial consequence, or is it also that this is just the right thing to do? And the other thing I would like to ask is, it's very interesting that you two both in the panel are now cooperating in the African continent. So is that maybe a way to have this financial security, that we just lean on each other's expertise and try to have this synergy in Africa, where you do good microgrids, he makes expertise in biogas, which just makes sense to work together, doesn't it?
Again, you give the answer in your question. Yes, I think the cooperation is a smart way for every company to work. But Florian and I, we are very clear in our visions. So I would never take money from Shell, for example. Yeah, and we are since we know each other. He told me that he liked the way we do, and that they have funds what they can give. So in Cambodia they give grants, okay? So I refused to get grants from Polarstern.
And I learned from him.
No, really, that was really, it was a discussion. Yeah. He called me and said, "Can I give you grants?" And I said, "Africa Cleantech don't take grants, because we fight against this ideology. So you can give me a loan." So he gave me a loan. Okay, and this was the way we start really to learn each other, and I think I could make the idea of Polarstern a little bit more better, because now this is even more sustainable for Polarstern to have some loans out, and the story for their clients is also more this is more impact.
Yep. Maybe Alessandro, on that, I remember this from the slide you showed 2 years ago to me when I was in the class. You had this interesting approach, this two-tier approach, which I really liked, and it was that so power blocks is power blocks are interesting.
We're mixing this.
Maybe we discuss after that.
Power blocks.
Cooling. So power blocks have this. It's marketed in Europe as a luxury good. It's for campers. It's for exhibitions and so on. So it's. And then in Africa, you think of it as a developing thing. So it's a bit like an insurance scheme. You take from who can spare and give it to who they need. So did that approach work out eventually, or like what's the consequence?
To be honest, this was probably more a marketing issue, but what it really was, we just at the beginning we did everything because we needed to sell these bloody boxes. So we first started in Europe, then we made some mountain huts, but afterwards we saw there is so much more potential in Africa. So we came back to our originally an idea and doing where it's really useful. I mean, it was designed for these markets, not for Europe. Yeah. But we had the problem that in Europe they also like this easier way how to putting things together. So we started there, but now as we now grow, we see the potential is so much bigger, and that's where we take it. But what is very important that I like to highlight, what we see it as a basic platform, an innovation, and that it's really, we also see that the innovation is really a broad range. We see it as an enabler for something that is then creating something new locally. It's really a Lego system that you can just start and build something with it, and we like this approach. So people, and we don't, I think it's also a little bit different to say we are the innovative ones there because they are innovative enough. Yeah. If you look at all the startups and what is coming up, we're just doing business with these innovative startups together, you know. So that's but sometimes what we have some advantages, and that's what we're using. For example, that it's very risky to start something in Africa in some countries, because if you do something wrong, then you're dead, because you don't survive, you know. So we have much more freedom to try things out and then struggle and then start again, and so we use that, and in combination with what is needed. So we talk to people and what could we do together, and sometimes it's just a kick that we do, and then we start a business together. So that's how we see it, and the profit comes from the combination.
Yeah. So that ties really nicely to what my next question was to Karen, because you mentioned about the investment risk. I think if we could have heard the video that Oster was playing, it ended on that note, didn't it? That about the risk in investing in Africa. So we started, like we're coming towards the end of the discussion now. So we started with this very dismal picture of these few figures that I put on slides. I would like to maybe put the next slide on, which highlights actually some of the success stories I would like to talk about. So Impact Water from the Yunus Social Business that Karen has already talked about. So these three are companies that really caught my attention when I was going through your portfolio, Karen. That Impact Water is this company in Uganda that you said who deliver the clean drinking water to schools. Now what really was interesting to me was the only innovation I could think they mentioned explicitly was that they changed the payment frequency from monthly to once in 3 months, and somehow it works. Because people are able to generate enough funds to pay every 3 months and not every month. And now it's affecting some 3 million students in across Uganda and maybe other countries, Kenya. Exactly. Green bioenergy up top is they make long burning charcoal from waste. And they have somehow cut off the middleman and have 60% entrepreneurs as women. And they are, I think I checked when I was making the slides, they're actually still cheaper than conventional charcoal in Uganda. Yeah. And Golden Bees is a apiary. It's a one-stop bee and honey solution. Again, cutting off the middleman, creating their own honey, training beekeepers. Something 2,000 old farmers have been affected. They have moved, I think, to even war-prone countries like Sudan and Democratic Republic of Congo and all these areas. So it works somehow. There is that risk of failure, but somehow it works. And so what have you done differently in mentoring these people, and how were these applications selected? What did they have that you could read and say, well, that makes me realize that this will succeed, and maybe that's the final note that everybody can take home today?
So we've had some failures as well, by the way. I think there are two things. One is a lot of these business models are really bread and butter business models. It's not, as I said, it's not a Facebook where you say it's all eyeballs and you have a lot of people who go on the website and you don't really know what your business model is. When we come in, we always want to see a business model and one that's already tested. And again, as I said, the innovation is very often not in the technology itself, or it's part of the technology, or how to put it together, as in fact a lot of you have done. You've also taken a lot of existing things and just combined them in a smart way. And if you can demonstrate that you have customers who are buying that, that's the first step to say you have a viable business model. So the mentoring is a lot on, so we build on entrepreneurs who've already figured out a business model, a solution, and that will create social impact. And then the challenge is more to say, how do you help the entrepreneurs to create a business, or basically to create the structures behind it, that it really becomes a viable business, and that they bring in the right expertise and the right structures. And a lot of it is building a team around it. It's building a team behind the entrepreneurs. You were saying that, basically have been an entrepreneur beforehand. A lot of people here have done business beforehand, not all of the entrepreneur we talk to have done business before. So it's important to really combine them with the right people and convince them to take on the right people. And that will really enable them to go to banks later on, to grow their business in a way that they can really have access to credit and to other funding sources that will help them grow.
But
and I think that is really the success behind all of them, to get them from that level to scaling on the team side.
But how closely do we monitor these companies once they are?
Very close. Basically, whenever we go into a company, we talk with them at least once a month. We also talk with them regularly. They have to report once a month, but we also have workshops with them. We discuss with them what their challenges are and try to identify focus areas for the next 3 months, for the next 6 months, and things we want to work with them on. And that is usually also how you have to build a trust relationship with them, to be really a mentor, to be accepted as a sparring partner, and that's how you can also influence them in taking the right steps, which sometimes are a bit painful. But yeah, I guess everybody can tell a story here about how painful it is to build a business. We've heard a bit of that.
Okay, so let's summarize that. It's been an interesting discussion. Everybody's, I think, a bit hungry. I think what was really interesting in the talk was that we established straight away at the start that this is possible. We are not talking about woo-woo science here. It is something that exists, something that is, maybe like the challenge of climate change, where we know the solution exists, it's about our will to do it. And I think what's then was established that there are ways to fund these things. If you really want, where there is a will, there is a way, and there are many avenues depending on, pick your poison. You pick the way that suits you. There are multiple ways to do it. And I think it's also important to reevaluate what is profit. What is profit? What is impactful profit? This concept of meaningful money. Money cannot be everything. At some point, you have to take a stand on the ethics of things, because the way we do business is not the right way we do business. And I think we nicely ended with this fact that there is a hope of all of these things not being taught, as we see from the 3 companies and the many others that there are, which exist outside of this group, but they still do it day to day. So it is possible, and as Professor Pelz added at some point that us researchers, we should move towards. I think it is happening. We are moving towards the idea that we realize that a theorem and an equation doesn't mean anything if it doesn't change anything. So let's end it at that. Thank you for your time and your participation and being involved, and we hope to see you again. In the end, I would like to just thank you, the audience as well. I know it's been difficult to sit, even though it's, I watched Avengers last week and it was still difficult. to sit for 3 hours, so I can imagine how it must be to listen people talk when it is one-way communication. But now is the time you can go out and network, and if you don't mind staying late, then just talk. I think people here are okay to stay late. Yes. And we would like to thank our volunteers from our organization who helped us organize this event. So. If you could all just come up stage, maybe we take a quick picture with the speakers and Jim has to answer.
I would also like to invite Stephanie to the stage because she's been from the day one the representative from Montenegro who was in first contact with us and supporting us with the logistics. So let's please Stephanie come here.
Come closer, guys.
Close.
So we do the photo and then we go to food.
Zumindest
Ja.